Hey folks, welcome to my lecture on the prospectus paper. In this lecture, I'll be talking about what a prospectus is. For some of you, this may be the first time writing a prospectus paper. And I'll also be talking about the research paper as well, because the prospectus and the research essay go hand in hand. In order to talk about the research essay, though, of course, I will need to touch a little bit on sources, right? Because the research essay will require you to bring in a variety of different source types. So we'll start a cursory kind of look at the research requirements as well, though the main focus of today will be the prospectus paper. Okay, paper. And again, all of this material will be available on Blackboard. Okay, so to that first question, what is a prospectus? Well, simply put, it's a document that lays out the details of a culminating paper or project. Essentially, it's your plan for a research essay. In this case, the prospectus is going to help me, right, have a sense of what you would like to pursue for that final essay, right? If we want to think about this simply, we can say that a prospectus helps you, the writer, help me, the reader, better understand your plan for that research assignment. It's kind of the know before you go, right? And you can sort of think of this as a movie trailer, right? It's going to give you a sense of the movie, right? Maybe the big plot lines, the general trajectory, kind of the flavor of the film, though we're still going to want to watch the film, and it's going to make you want to watch the film. So it's kind of similar to that, right? And you see this image that I've put on. Your prospectus paper will be typed, but I like this image because it shows kind of the work that you will be doing for a prospectus paper, where it's like, okay, what research am I doing, right? What sort of sources am I bringing in for this paper? What the heck am I focusing on? Right? What's my skin in the game, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so for the research essay, you are going to be expected to use scholarly and secondary research, right? Now, in your prospectus, I'm going to ask you the question, well, what sort of research do you plan to bring into your essay? Now, by no means do you need all of your research done. Absolutely not. In fact, our next big assignment, the annotated bibliography, is going to help you with that research bit. For this, I just want a general, I'm hoping to get a general sense of the scholarly and secondary research you're going to want to bring in. So this is going to be a quick look at what scholarly and secondary research is. I'll have a longer lecture when we get to the annotated bibliography. But generally speaking, know that scholarly research is typically written by researchers from a university, right? Those are the authors. It usually has an abstract or a summary at the beginning. Often it's going to use jargon, meaning kind of specialized language, right? It's going to be written for researchers or students or teachers in a particular field, right? So the intended audience isn't the general population, but rather a particular field or discipline of study. Often these are going to be peer-reviewed, meaning you're not just going to publish it, you're going to have to get a peer or a scholar or academic in the field to look at it first and kind of give you the okay. There's not a lot of advertising in scholarly research. It is going to contain a works cited or reference page or reference pages, and it's often published in an academic journal, which we can locate using the library databases, right? So thinking about that, I'm going to show you an example of a scholarly article, and then we're going to really quickly look at the databases, the library databases, though I'm going to have a much longer lecture on that down the line, so don't think this is it. So this is an example of a scholarly article, right? And notice it already has a pretty formal look to it. We see that it's written by Peter Elbow, and down here we get the fact that he is an emeritus professor from the University of Massachusetts in English, and that he ran the writing program there. We see that it's contained within the academic journal College English, volume 64, number 5, and was published in May of 2002. If you start looking through the essay, you might start seeing particular language that you might not be familiar with, right? because it's written for that particular field. Notice that the author is using references, right? Here he's talking about Bartholomew, who's another researcher in the field of English. And I'm going to quickly scroll down. Notice it's pretty long, and that it does contain an extensive works cited page, meaning the author has been very diligent about citing their sources. And for your paper, you're going to have to be very diligent about citing your own sources. But this is an example of what often a scholarly article would look like. Now, where would you find such a thing? Well, if you go to the library page, our CSU library page, right, we own heaps of databases, which you would actually have to pay for, but your tuition actually covers this, so use them. And we have these different databases. It's always going to ask you to log in because typically you would have to pay for these, so they want to make sure that you're a student, right? And so, for example, we own EBSCOhost, which is a massive database. And notice you can begin searching for articles here, and you can actually say that you only want scholarly peer review. You can check this box here, right? Okay, so again, I'm going to have a much longer and thorough overview of collecting of research, but I just want you to get the flavor of the sort of work you're going to be doing in your research essay, and how you'll start wanting to think about that work and what sources you're going to use as you start thinking about your prospectus paper. Okay, so the other thing that you're going to see on your prospectus as well as the research paper is I'm asking you to bring in one primary piece of research. Now, for some of you, you might be familiar with this, but for others, you might be asking, what is a primary research? How am I going to detail a primary research plan if I don't even know what it is? And again, I'll have more information on this, but generally speaking, primary research is the research you go out and do, the research you conduct, unlike the scholarly secondary research, which has been conducted by someone else. Right, it's second to you. You're borrowing it. You're saying according to Twangy, right? You didn't go out and do Twangy's research. She did that research. But with primary research, you become the researcher. You go out into the world, or the virtual world right now. Obviously, I'm not asking you to go out into the real world, but you can do this virtually. And that's where you do surveys. That's where you do an interview. That's where you do an observation, right? Take a cue from Twangy. She had the secondary research. She brought in heaps of data from outside sources, but she also went out and interviewed actual iGeners. She also collected from the pages of the social media pages of iGeners. She actually collected comments, right? She wouldn't observed, what they were doing, right? So this is stuff you could do. You could go and observe TikTok videos. Maybe we'll see how that plays out. But you could actually go and, on a Facebook page or on a Twitter and observe what is being said. Or you could go and create a survey, right, and disseminate it. Like Google Forms is free to y'all, right? So you could do this on your own. So when I'm asking you to conduct primary research, that is what I mean. Go and do a little research of your own. Take a cue from Twangy. Okay, guys. So at this point, we've kind of talked around the prompts. At this point, I'm assuming you're like, hey, let's actually look at the prompts. Okay, so if you go into the Week 6 folder, I'm already there, you'll see the prospectus prompt and research essay. Okay, so let's start with the prospectus. This is what it looks like. It's due October 11th. You need to put it in MLA format, and it's worth 30 points or 15% of your overall course grade. Whew. What is a prospectus? We just talked about that, right? It's your plan for a culminating paper. It lays out the details of a bigger project. It's the know before you go. It's the trailer to the movie. Okay, so we should get that. So here's the actual prompt. I'm calling on you to write a prospectus that overviews your plan for your final research paper, linked here, right? To help with organization, Please divide your prospectus into the following 4 sections and use the same subheadings that I do here. So there's 4 parts to this. There's an optional 5th, but I'll talk about that in a second. The first section, I'm asking you to explore your prompt selection. If you go to the research paper, there's 2 options. There's actually 2 prompts for you to choose from. You can do one or the other. So you need to tell me a little bit about which one you selected and what factors you played into this decision. Like, why did you choose this one? I'm going to ask you your knee-jerk response to the prompt question. At this point, you haven't done much research, guys. So I'm going to ask you right now, what is your general or knee-jerk or kind of current answer to that prompt question, recognizing that it might change later as you conduct your own research? Is there a slice or demographic, and we'll talk about this when we look at the research essay, that you would like to focus your research on? For example, maybe folks living in rural areas, or iGen women, or Latinx iGeners, or iGeners not in college, right? So please feel encouraged to focus on a slice or demographic. You don't have to talk about, the narrower, the better. So that's the first section. You're going to tell me a little bit about the prompt selection, why you chose that, kind of what you're thinking your answer might be, and kind of what demographic or what slice or kind of more narrow argument you're planning to make. Second section, I'm going to ask you to explore your background and biases. How do you think your background and your lived experience is going to affect your perspective on the issue, guys? What personal biases might play a role in how you view your research topic? And how do you plan to stay aware of these biases, right? So if I'm talking about the mental health crisis affecting iGeners, right, I might have to work through the fact that my younger brother suffered and continues to from a variety of mental health issues. I might have to work through that because that definitely gives me a certain bias. If I'm talking about the effects of social media on young women, particularly girls in middle school and high school, right, I might need to be attuned to the fact that I have 2 cousins, 2 women, young girls really at this point, who are part of that demographic. And I often get kind of worried for them as I see them using filters already on their photos, as I see them creating these avatars for themselves that are wearing, I'll call them interesting clothes, right? So these are where I'm thinking about, okay, who am I in relationship to this prompt? And what might kind of play a role in my perspective? Because I need to know that, right? Section 3 is my secondary sources. I'm going to ask you to think about what secondary sources you might use in your essay. You might think about if you're using iGen by Jean Twenge, and if there's particular subsections or chapters that are going to be helpful. You can explain that. Also, you might start thinking about the articles and data that iGen and Twenge cites. Right? Are there any kind of articles or data or research studies that she references that you're like, ooh, that would be a great source. I need to hunt that down, right? Now, this does not have to be a complete list of secondary sources, but beginning to think about the secondary sources you're going to bring in. The final mandatory section is your primary research plan. I'm going to ask you what primary research you're planning to conduct. Remembering that for this type of research, you might have to get out into the world, or virtual world, I should really say, and conducting your own research. Think about Twenge when you're thinking about this section. She conducted interviews. She conducted surveys. She conducted observations. She even trolled the comments of iGeners on social media accounts and used them. Take a cue from her. That's what I mean by primary research. Doing your own research, not just using the research that has already been done for you. And then the final section, which is optional, is just any other concerns or uncertainties, there we go, that you might have about the research paper. So if there's things that are kind of unclear or opaque to you, this is where you can help me understand those concerns of yours. So that is the prospectus paper, guys. Now, as you'll see, there's numerous references to your actual research paper, which means we kind of got to look at that, right? So here's your actual final research paper, which is not due till much later in the semester. It's 7 to 9 pages, guys. This is a long form essay. It requires 3 scholarly sources and at least 1 primary source. You need to use a good MLA format. You need to show me that you've got MLA down pat. And you also need to be careful with your documentation, including a works cited page and annotated bibliography, which I'll talk about later. Don't worry about that now. And really, this is the paper that needs to demonstrate that you are reaching at a clear, competent level the English 200 course objectives. Now, here's my background. I used a lot of visuals to kind of give you a sense of what I'm going to be asking you. Maybe you guys already have an assumption based on these visuals. So we'll talk about the background to this particular type of writing. For a research essay in academia, you need to adopt the tone of reasonable, fair-minded, careful thinker. You're trying to strive for the truth. We're never going to get to the big picture truth of everything, guys. Sorry, but you're trying to get as close to the truth of the issue as possible. So, of course, we have our own biases, as I talked about a moment ago. But for the research paper, we're striving for the truth. I'm asking you to kind of be open to things and not go in with this mentality of, well, this is my position, and I'm going to try to find research to back up my position. Be open to where your research takes you. Be open to a evolution of your argument, right? And obviously in this type of essay, a research essay, you're going to draw on research to support your position, right? That I think we should understand, that you're going to be using quotes and paraphrases, and you're going to cite this research in order to develop a larger point or larger argument. Okay, so as I mentioned, this particular essay, the research essay, you have 2 options. You're going to respond to one of these, not both. Okay, guys, so for your prospectus paper, you're going to have to let me know which option you are choosing. And this is one of the things I'm going to say I do not want you to change. Once you have this in your prospectus paper, I don't really want you to switch options, okay? So option 1 is about social trends, and there is a whole link to social trends here. Now, by trends, I don't mean getting bangs, guys. I mean large social trends, right? Like increases in mental health issues or a delay in adulthood, kind of the big picture trends that Twaney brings up and are listed here in this Pew Research study. So you can go there for more options. Anyway, if you choose this option, I'm going to ask you to focus on an emerging trend among iGeners. What's an emerging trend among iGeners? And what impact is this trend having on individuals or society, or maybe a particular segment or demographic of society? And then ultimately, is this trend worth following? Should iGeners get on board with this? Why or why not? Now, if you choose this option, you're going to obviously need to identify and discuss the social trend that's prominent. You want to give us a little background. Here's what's going on, right? After you do so, though, you're going to want to develop an argument, right, about the impact or shape that this trend is having on iGeners and the advisability of following this trend. Is it prudent to get on board with this? Why? Right? Reliable research, clear reasoning, and thoughtful explanation should really anchor your argument. So in this first one, it's pretty open, guys. Choose a social trend that's kind of prominent right now, and you can think about, okay, how is this actually impacting this generation? And ultimately, is this something they should get on board with? Why or why not? Okay, second option, though, is about social media. And again, I have a link to that if you have questions about what I mean. If you choose this option, you're going to think about the impact that social media is having on iGeners. And you will answer the question, should iGeners embrace social media and all the possibilities that these platforms offer? Or are there benefits to limiting or maybe completely quitting applications such as Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, etc.? So if you choose this option, you're going to take a stand and develop that stand using research on the value of like doing away with, quitting, limiting, or maybe embracing one's social media consumption. And again, I think the demographic question is going to be important here, right? Are you talking about all iGeners? Are you talking about iGeners who are struggling with mental health issues? Are you talking about high school girls who are you talking about? iGeners is a huge umbrella term. You will want to get more narrow. You will want to think about the different segments or demographics of iGeners, because I think someone who's using social media, maybe living in a rural area, right, to connect with folks around them, that might be different than someone who's using it in other ways. So again, I'm asking for nuance here, not just a big yes, get rid of it, or no, embrace it, right? And again, you want to develop that position on the advisability or prudence of having or not having social media with that reliable research, with the clear reasoning and thoughtful explanation. Okay, guys. So let me go back to, here we go. I know that that's a lot, but I hope in this, through this lecture, you at least have a general sense of the prospectus paper, right? That is where you're going to help me understand in those 4 different kind of subheadings, or this 4 different parts of the paper, right? You're going to help me understand what you're doing in your research essay. I hope you also have a general understanding of what your research essay is calling you to do. So for the next couple of weeks, guys, as you're reading Twenge, as you're viewing the world, keep these questions in mind, right? Start thinking about what, trends you would like to focus on, or start thinking about how social media is shaping this generation. Start thinking about the demographic, not just all iGeners, but if there's a particular slice of the iGen demographic, it's a huge demographic, right, that you're particularly interested in. Okay, guys, again, that's our first look. There'll be much more on this, but I hope that gives you a sense of those generals.